Scooters are being hacked. Make sure you are resetting your ad ID, but does it actually do anything? And Australia's parliament has some hacks to deal with. All that coming up now on ThreatWire. Greetings! I am Shannon Morse, and this is ThreatWire for February 19th, 2019, your summary of the threats to our security, privacy, and internet freedom. Last month, thanks to our patrons, I started rendering the video RSS file at a much smaller file size to help with data caps. It's still at 1080p format, so if you see any kind of compatibility issues, make sure to let me know. The link for that video RSS is down in the video description right here on YouTube, so make sure to click that if you want to subscribe. And real quick, I would like to give a special shout out to my newest Patreon supporters this week, including Ecliptics, Dave, Manuel, Wallenton, Israel, Siggy, and Andy. And by the way, for every new patron that signs up for the month of February, I will be donating $5 to WISP, which is the Women in Security and Privacy Initiative. So you unlock perks, and we both help a good cause. So if you are interested in supporting ThreatWire, hit up patreon.com/ThreatWire. And now, onto the news. Zimperium, which is a mobile security company over in Dallas, Texas, released an article explaining how the Xiaomi M365 electric scooter could be hacked dangerously. The researcher behind this is Rani Indan, who explained in the post that this was a proof of concept, released for educational purposes. The publication went live after being disclosed to Xiaomi, and a temporary mitigation for the hack was also included in the post. Now, since electric scooters are a new and very useful way for commuters to easily get to and from work, I even use them all the time here in Oakland, these became a target for their testing under the Z Labs research team. Bluetooth is the central communication protocol used by this scooter, which allows the user to set things like cruise control, eco mode, anti-theft settings, and update the firmware. Now, the app, which is connected via mobile phone to the scooter, is password protected, and yes, the password can be changed. Now, Zimperium discovered that while there is a prompt for a password, that credential is not actually being used to authenticate the user before executing commands to the scooter. So while the app validates it, the scooter does not. This means that Zimperium's Z Labs was able to scan for and connect to scooters in their vicinity without any kind of authentication. And they included a video of their test, which is linked below. Now, their proof of concept hack sends a payload to the scooter, which looks like the correct sequence of data. The scooter accepts it as a real command from a rider. The payload can lock any scooter within working distance, which is up to 100 meters away. Now, Zimperium discovered that they could do denial of service attacks, deploy malware or malicious new firmware, and do a targeted attack like making a scooter brake or accelerate suddenly. Zimperium made some of the source code available on GitHub, and it can be temporarily mitigated by first, as a user, connecting your mobile device to the scooter and keeping it connected. Unfortunately, this isn't a very grand fix, and at this time there are no patches available. Xiaomi is aware of the problem and are communicating with their third-party vendors on fixing the vulnerability. It is now time for some Android security news. First, 4 Italian security researchers over at Sapienza University in Rome, Italy, discovered and built a proof of concept tool that could do app de-anonymization of Tor on Android phones. While Tor is widely used to anonymize traffic on the web, the researchers made clear that this POC could not de-anonymize Tor in its entirety, so your real IP address or other identifying details would still be hidden. This could give away what websites you are visiting while using Tor with an accuracy of up to 97%. The researchers were able to distinguish between TCP packet types, so they could tell if a user was browsing or using email or chat, audio streaming, video streaming, doing file transfers, voice over IP, or P2P file sharing. They discovered patterns specifically used by Android apps in TCP packets, and they used an algorithm with machine learning to learn the Tor traffic patterns over time. They could then decipher 10 test apps, including YouTube, Instagram, uTorrent, and a lot more, even while a user was using Tor. Now, luckily, it does not work if there is background traffic on the device, which can create a noisy channel, and using multiple applications at the same time creates confusion for the algorithm. Streaming services look similar, which can also cause that 97% accuracy to drop as well. Now, since this is for a research paper though, the parties involved do plan to release the code, and at this time, nope, there is no fix in sight. And lastly, way back in 2013, both Apple and Google made sweeping privacy changes to their mobile operating systems, now allowing users to opt out or limit ad tracking interest-based ads that appeared in their apps or on their devices. Now, this was called the Ad ID or Advertiser ID, and it could be reset, which would reset the data shared to advertisers from the device. This would be kind of like clearing cookies from a computer. And over time, cookies start to grow again, but whenever you reset them, it resets that behavioral advertising that you may see on your device or on your social media timeline. Now, since persistent identifiers like your device serial number, your IMEI, your Wi-Fi MAC, your SIM serial number, and more don't change with your device, the adoption of the Ad ID and user control over it were pretty much well needed. But unfortunately, even though both Apple and Google have policies restricting app developers from retrieving the Ad ID alongside other persistent identifiers, lots of applications were just doing so anyway. And this means that they are undermining the very reason why these can be reset. While you can reset your Ad ID all day long, you can't reset your IMEI, for example. So if an advertiser has sent your IMEI and a reset Ad ID, they still know it's yours because of that IMEI. Now, Sergey Egoman of the International Computer Science Institute explained that they found over 17,000 apps that were abusing this policy back in September. As of recently, that number grew to 18,000 who were sending the Ad ID alongside other identifiers that were persistent. 24,000 in total were transmitting the Ad ID by itself, so that means that over 70% of those were abusing the policy or just outright ignoring it. This included popular apps like Flipboard and Angry Birds Classic, audiobooks from Audible, and a lot more. Many of these recipient domains were obviously advertisers or data collection aggregators like ads.flurry.com or admarvel or adcolony.com. Now, Echoman says the report was submitted 5 months ago, but they have not heard back from Google about how they will be addressing this violation of their own policy. In an article by CNET, Google did respond that they did take action against some of the apps, but they did not clarify how many. Some apps responded to questions by stating that they collect the Ad ID, but not for advertising and targeting. I would like to say a big thanks to Joel. Hi Joel, for sharing this story on the ThreatWire Patreon Discord. The Sydney Morning Herald of Australia reported that Prime Minister Scott Morrison spoke in regards to a cyber attack that had hit the country's political parties alongside with the Parliament House computer network just weeks ago. Morrison called this attack that of a sophisticated state actor and explained that it affected the Liberal, National, and Labour parties. Now, while no country was blamed for the attack, authorities believe that it may be attributed to China, though it could have been altered to deflect blame towards that country. Now, since an election will be taking place in Australia soon, this does bear some resemblance to the 2016 election hacks that happened in the US with the DNC and during the presidential campaigns. Morrison said that the Australian Cybersecurity Centre would be prepared to support political parties, and additional measures were put in place to protect the integrity of the electoral system. This comes just days after the Department of Parliamentary Services announced that anyone with an Australian Parliament House email address, including politicians and staff, were affected in the security incident earlier this month. In that case, all passwords were reset even though there was no evidence of any data being accessed. Now, while details of this incident are kind of vague, the Cybersecurity Center felt a response was needed because the attacker was able to gain a foothold in the network. It was at this time that the party network breaches were also discovered. Now, while this matter is being taken seriously by authorities, Elise Thomas over at ABC AU brings up a very good and valid point. Are they also securing home networks and IoT devices and bring your own devices of politicians and staff? Now, while government networks are the obvious target, they are probably much harder to get into than a staffer's connected home. And if a device is taken from network to network, like from your home to the government facility, it could potentially be used as an entry point for infiltration of data on the target network. It's an important piece of the ever-evolving security puzzle, and one that should definitely not be ignored. Thank you so much to my Patreon supporters. If you are interested in getting access to a slew of extras and perks, even if it's just $1 or $2 a month, totally fine. Hit that button to become a Patreon supporter because it all helps. And it shows me that you appreciate the work that I'm putting in for this show, so thank you. I appreciate you. Also, a big thanks to our Hush Puppy Perk level patrons for sending in their fur baby photos. I love them. Keep them coming. They're adorable. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And with that, I'm Shannon Morse, and I will see you on the internet.